Ethiopians vote in the first election since the death of their long-serving Prime Minister Meles Zenawi. The ruling party has a remarkable record of economic growth after years of famine. But what about the accusations of a crackdown on the opposition and freedom of expression? This is Inside Story. Hello and welcome to the program. I'm Fuli Batibo. The citizens of one of Africa's most populous countries, Ethiopia, have gone to the polls. But the result of the election is just about guaranteed. The ruling Ethiopian People's Revolutionary Democratic Front dominates the country's politics. In the last election in 2010, the opposition managed to win just one parliamentary seat out of 547. So is Ethiopia really a developmental democracy as the government says it is? We'll talk to our guests in just a moment. But first, Mohamed Ado sets things up for us from the Ethiopian capital, Addis Ababa.
These are the fifth elections in Ethiopia's history, and the ruling EPRDF party is expected to get another 5-year term in office. EPRDF has ruled Ethiopia for the last 25 years and is credited with much of the economic progress as well as opening up the rural areas of Ethiopia where most of the agricultural production takes place and where most of its supporters are said to be based. Now, despite the possibility of defeat facing them, Ethiopia's fragmented opposition officials say that they are in the electoral process as some sort of a peaceful protest. They've been complaining of intimidation and harassment of their supporters as well as officials and candidates, and some of the election observers that they have sent to different parts of the country.
Well, people in Ethiopia suffered through famine and civil war for years under the military dictatorship of Mengistu Haile Mariam. But in 1991, the Ethiopian People's Revolutionary Democratic Front seized power and forced them out. Meles Zenawi became prime minister in 1995, and under his rule, there were some positive changes. The economy grew and a multi-party system was introduced. The country's first competitive election was held in 2005. The opposition made major gains, but accused the government of vote rigging. In the protests that followed, 200 people were killed. And when elections were held again 5 years later, Ethiopia's democratic opening had closed. The ruling party took 99% of the seats. The current Prime Minister Haile Mariam Desalegn took over power when Meles Zenawi died in 2012. Well, let's now bring in our guests for today's Inside Story. In Addis Ababa, Ethiopia, Redwan Hussein. He's the Ethiopian government spokesman and communications minister. In Nairobi, Kenya, Rachel Nicholson, Horn of Africa campaigner at the rights groups Amnesty International. And also in Addis via Skype, Jonathan Tesfaye, public relations head for the opposition Blue Party. Thank you all for being on the program today. Redwan Hussein, if I may start with you. As you are aware, the opposition as well as human rights groups have accused the ruling party of Ethiopia of intimidation, of using authoritarian tactics to ensure an election victory. What do you respond to them?
I would like to categorically deny that, because the reality doesn't show what they have been claiming. This is a nation that apportions taxpayers' money to just encourage the political parties to run into the election and to bring more candidates to the election. 65% of the budget that is allotted is based on the registry in the election and the number of candidates that each party has fielded, and also the number of women candidates that each party can bring about. So in each candidate that each party has brought, they get more money. This is, I think, only Ethiopia, and if there are other countries, it must be only few, that a party is given taxpayers' money to run in the election, because we know in other democracies, parties do need money to run in the election, but here in Ethiopia, it's quite to the contrary.
So are you saying that this election then is free and fair, has been free and fair?
By all standards, it's been free and fair. Let's look at the yardsticks. One is the time allotment to campaign and to debate and to reach the consensus. The other one is the resources that are available. Now, we have about 37 million Ethiopians who've registered to vote, and it's about now to be concluded. And most of the areas, there are about 90% who are voting. Now, 37 million Ethiopians know whom to vote to. They know on which premises that they are voting for. So if people have been taken seriously, if any party would take the people seriously, it's not out of vacuity that 37 million people would throng to vote and would throng to register as voters.
Redwan, let me just ask you this.
If we are talking about democracy, it is what's happening.
Okay, let me just put this to you before I move on to our other guests. If you say this election is free and fair, why is it that the only foreign election observers that have been allowed into Ethiopia are observers from the African Union, which have sent 59 officials for a country of 37 million registered voters? Why weren't the European Union or the US Carter Center, the US-based Carter Center, which monitored the elections in 2005 and 2010, why were they not invited this time around?
The first thing that must be clear is that the main observers are Ethiopians and the main masters of their destiny are Ethiopians. But we have an observable election. But our election could not be guaranteed only when the Europeans or Americans would come and observe it. They have been observing it. They would have observed it had they asked for. They didn't ask for. Rather, the European Commission came and said they are not interested because of their financial problems in Europe. We took their word and we didn't invite. But even had we invited them, that doesn't mean or that doesn't guarantee the fairness and the democratic nature of our election.
Okay.
The fairness of our election must be judged by Ethiopians.
Okay. Well,
and the yardsticks are all complete and fulfilled.
Let's hear from another Ethiopian now, Jonathan Tesfaye, who's a spokesman for the opposition Blue Party. Jonathan, you've heard what Redwan has just said, accusing the opposition of basically using taxpayers' money to run in this election. What do you respond? And you have also said that this election is a foregone conclusion. If it is the case, why are you running?
Yeah, well, I mean, to begin with, the taxpayer money that we're using, it's completely ridiculous. I mean, take a look at what has been going on for the last 20 years. EPRDF has been manipulating, abusing public money for its own party work. Like you can take a look at the recent activity that they have conducted. They spend a lot of money. They use the military or the police force to march for TPLF and OPDO anniversary, which is very absurd. I mean, and they have the audacity to talk about the parties using the tax money, and well, it doesn't make sense. Well, I think the thing is, we need to ask the right question. Why is the government becoming very repressive, and why is the intimidation is very high?
When you talk about repression and intimidation, what exactly do you mean?
Good. I mean, take a look at what happened after 2005 election. You have the Anti-Terrorism Law, by design, deliberately to put political leaders, journalists, celebrated journalists like Iskender and Rio to jail, and bloggers as well, which means to eliminate all influential figures from the political arena.
Yeah,
so that
but that was back then. But that was in 2005. Sorry to interrupt you. What are your current frustrations today? What are your frustrations today? And tell us about the campaign. Was it a level playing field for you during this campaign?
No, it's not completely. I mean, censorship is prohibited by the Constitution. Now we have censorship. Blue Party only have 11 programs returned because the broadcast authorities didn't want to transmit it, which is obviously a censorship. And you have campaigners going through a lot of different parts of the country, which has been harassed, beaten, and arrested, and even to put a nail under the tires of a car to stop them from moving around in the cities. I mean, it's huge. You have observers right now being arrested even at the election day in Southern Nation and nationalities, specifically in Sidama. We have about 13 detainees. In Gamogofa, again, we have 17 detainees. We have supposed to have campaigners and detainees, observers in action as well now in prison.
Okay. Well, we've heard your your concerns there and your grievances. Let's bring in Rachel Nicholson now. Rachel, we have heard from the ruling party, from the government there. We've heard from the opposition. Tell us about the state of multi-party democracy in Ethiopia today. How do most Ethiopians view this election? Is it a non-event, or are they hopeful that it will bring change?
Well, Amnesty International's concerns are around the widespread repression in the country and the environment in which these elections are taking place. So my colleagues have referred to some of the concerns around restrictions on political parties, on the use of anti-terrorism proclamation against the independent media. We have a trial of 6 prominent bloggers and 3 journalists still ongoing as we speak in Addis Ababa, as well as widespread crackdowns on protests. But that's the visible side of the repression in the country. Mm-hmm. There's also much broader repression, use of, for example, the politicization of access to development assistance, politicization of access to job opportunities and to employment opportunities to really maintain political control over the population.
So are you saying that people are being forced to vote
in which these elections are taking place?
Are you saying that many Ethiopians are being forced to vote?
I'm not saying that many Ethiopians are being forced to vote, but Amnesty International is saying that the widespread repression in the country does affect people beyond those directly involved in politics.
Redwan Hussein, I'd like you to respond to what we've just heard from Rachel from Amnesty International, and also from Jonathan Tesfaye, who's accused the government of repression once again, these claims of repression and so on. The opposition saying that they weren't able to campaign in places like the rural areas where they weren't able to distribute pamphlets, for instance. What do you respond to that?
The issues that she raised has been a mantra that has been said once and again, and it's been just simply being rehashed. I don't think Amnesty International has a clue about the Ethiopian democracy and how it is based on diversity. This country is a multinational, multicultural nation. Now, it's been based on its diversity, its cultures. The federal system has been thriving. We all know Ethiopia has been nosediving until to the precipice where it would irredeemably be scattered. But now it has been rescued only by embracing democracy, which is based on diversity. Now, it's after embracing that diversity and democracy that the government has also came about with comprehensive policies which have been implemented to brought about development and prosperity. We have not yet finished the poverty in Ethiopia, but we've been growing faster. It's a double digit for the last a decade and couple of years plus. It has not been come out of coercion. It has been out of the millions of Ethiopians who have been toiling to uplift their livelihood.
Right.
And you cannot coerce millions of people to engage in industriousness and bring about life.
Let me just say,
it has to be development. It has to be taking people seriously.
Let me just interrupt you for a second there. When you talk about growth, it is true that Ethiopia has enjoyed immense growth over the last few years. But Redwan Hussein, the wealth hasn't been spread widely enough in the country. I mean, 20 million people out of 94 million live below the poverty line.
But again, you have to look at, it has been 50% of Ethiopians who've been under abject poverty. Now, millions of people have uplifted from poverty line. Now, it's been reduced from 50% to about 82%. And that has been achieved in just a decade. China has not eradicated its poverty totally. It's been uplifting millions of people. We've been growing faster. Many millions of people have been uplifted from that abject poverty. Look at our growth. It's agricultural based. It's based on smallholding farmers. We have to convince the farmers to change their production capacity, to change their producing habits, to change their industriousness, and to use more technology to produce their production in full capacity. That needs cooperation. That needs understanding the people. That needs taking the people seriously. That needs a series of discussion and dialogue until the people would be convinced. And there is embedded democracy in it. So we cannot eradicate poverty just at one shot. We don't have panacea. We only have a democracy whereby we convince millions of people to change their life.
Okay. Well, we'll talk a bit more about this, but I do want to talk about the fact that Ethiopia's ruling party has been routinely criticized for its intolerance of dissent. Rights groups accuse the government of using the controversial anti-terrorism proclamation to arrest and jail critics. That includes the media. Ethiopia is among the 10 worst jailers of journalists in the world. And in the lead up to this election, opposition candidates say they were harassed, as you've heard, and detained by police. Well, Ethiopia's Prime Minister recently spoke to Al Jazeera. My colleague Martine Dennis challenged him on the government's record of cracking down on dissenting voices.
I can agree with you on issues that we have to do more, because I say this is a fledgling democracy. And we say that this is a house in making. And democracy cannot be built within few years of time. That the thing is, we believe that we are on the right track in democratizing this country. And democracy should, you have to ask the people themselves rather than the parties only. I mean, it's only one side of the equation. Now, there is a ruling party, EPRDF, there are opposition party members. Why don't you ask the people? What do the people say? The ultimate judge of this process are the people on the grassroots. And I suggest that let our people judge us, not somebody from outside.
Rachel, the Prime Minister says, let our people judge us, not people from outside, i.e. not Amnesty, not Human Rights Watch, not all these rights groups. And he says they are on the right track to democratizing the country. What do you respond?
So Amnesty International speaks to many people about their experiences of the human rights situation, of human rights violations in the country. So my response to that would be to say that we are campaigning, we're a movement of millions of members who are campaigning for the respect of the human rights of all Ethiopians. And some of the testimony that we receive from those who are supposedly benefiting from democracy is deeply troubling. For example, we spoke to a primary school maths teacher in the Oromia region who fled the country after he had been asked to promote the achievements of the ruling party to his pupils. These are maths pupils. And he had said that there's no space for politics in the classroom. He found himself arrested. He was detained incommunicado for 7 months. His family didn't know where he was. No one knew where he was. And he was tortured and interrogated. He was accused of being a member of an armed group. And eventually he was asked, so what party do you support? And he said, I don't support any party. And he had a gun with a bayonet put to his eye, and he was blinded with bayonets. So these are the everyday stories that we're telling of people from Ethiopia, those people that democracy is supposed to be benefiting, but who don't have the space to share their own views or to even say, I don't want to have anything to do with politics.
Right. Jonathan Tesfaye, you heard what Rachel said there about many people venting their frustrations, but then again, when you ask them where else they could turn to, many people don't seem to know, because the opposition in Ethiopia today is very much fractured. There are 57 parties, and even if you weren't able to campaign, maybe perhaps if you started off by going under one banner, the opposition anyway, by being under one banner, that would help perhaps, wouldn't it? I mean, why is the Ethiopian opposition so fractured today? Why 57 parties?
Well, it's not fractured. In fact, being 57 shows how the government is trying to legitimize itself through deception. We have, honestly speaking, there is only Blue Party and Medrek, which is who has have the authenticity within the people. They're operating and they have a huge respect. Except those, I wouldn't say there is a legitimate party who can raise questions of the people and trying to give answers. So have that in mind. Though we understand there are problems in the opposition, but the lion's share coming from the repression that we're facing. Whenever there is a strong movement, whenever there is a strong public figure, politically speaking, who can, inspire a lot of people, ends up in jail. And this kind of things scare people away. It doesn't people to engage in politics.
But, you know,
It's
your
not
critics,
because
Jonathan, would say it's easy to always hide under the repression and, you know, criticize the government. I mean, what is the Ethiopian opposition offering today to the people of the country besides all this constant criticism of the government? What are you offering?
Well, I don't think the economical boom is helping the people back here. We see every day what's happening on the streets. I mean, you have a huge gap between the poor and rich. You have migrants every now and then. We hear a lot of bad news on the Gulf, and that doesn't show there is an economic growth in Ethiopia. Rather, it shows that it is controlled or monopolized by a few. And the opposition is trying to solve this problem from the root cause. And the root cause, we think, is the system itself. It's corrupt, and economically, the land is owned by the government, and all the corruption is coming from, basically, from the problem with the land administration. So we have that alternatives. But like we always say, it's not about the alternative. It's not about the promises that we can give for the people. It's about having a strong, conducive, and inclusive system that will benefit everyone, every group or every camp. We don't have that. I mean, we're having debate about the federal system, which should have been put like something that shouldn't be touched. We're arguing about different topics that should that we should have.
Let's allow Redwan Hussein to respond.
Long time ago, so there is no national consensus, let alone talking about alternatives. So we're trying to have a dialogue. We're trying to have, or to force the regime to become more inclusive, to have a dialogue, and to have a system which.
Let's allow Jonathan. Let's allow Redwan Hussein to respond. Redwan, your response, and also as he pointed out there, if Ethiopia is such a vibrant country today, vibrant economy, why are so many young people leaving for Europe, making the perilous journey through the Mediterranean? I mean, what is your government doing to address this?
I'll come to that point later on, but I first have to address the issues that you raised, that of the banner. Yes, the problems that we have in Ethiopia is a fractured, many meager political parties. We have 75 political parties, and 58 of them are now running. Now, when you look at the last election, you just mentioned last time, EPRDF won 99% of the seats, but there is misunderstanding here. It didn't won 99% of the votes. In this only, if you look at it, it won only about 60%, 45% of it. 40% of the voters did not vote for EPRDF. They voted for opposition. But opposition was too tiny and fractured, and they couldn't muster the whole vote to win a seat. That was the problem, because our system is first past the system. So they couldn't win the seats. It doesn't mean that they did not vote the votes, but they couldn't come together. One of the parties which is not willing to even join now is Samai party, which Jonathan is standing for. The other issue that you mentioned is, the Amnesty International friend mentioned, is the Anti-Terrorism Law. Are we supposed to sit idle to our population to be fractured and traumatized and horrified by a terrorist element here and there? Are they going to cite us a nation which is not failed to sit aside and to see idly for his population to be terrorized? This is one issue. The other issue, this Amnesty International, it is like us, do not even appreciate those journalists who are still working for the last 20 years. They are abetting those who break the law, are washing them with awards, are washing them with scholarships. They are not even mentioning the ones who have been working in the last 20 years.
I wish we could continue this discussion. There's so much more to talk about, obviously, and hopefully we'll get to do that on Al Jazeera again very, very soon. Thank you so much for joining us. Redwan Hussein, the Ethiopian government spokesman, Jonathan Tesfaye, also in Addis Ababa, and Rachel Nicholson in Nairobi, Kenya. Thank you all for your time. And thank you for joining us on this edition of Inside Story. As always, we'd like to hear your thoughts. You can get in touch with us on our program page at aljazeera.com. You can also post your comments at facebook.com/AJ Inside Story, or tweet us at AJ Inside Story. From me, Fuli Batibo, and the whole team, thanks for watching. Bye for now.